Hello and welcome to South Africa on 99.94 Cricket Every Day. I'm Neil Manthorpe. My co-host is Lungani Zama. South Africa on 99.94 is your new home for South African content. We'll be dropping into your podcast feed, as you hopefully know by now, at least twice a week. So do please rate, review and subscribe. Also, if you get a chance, if you haven't done so already, check out the Mitch Johnson Show. You can find it wherever you found this podcast. He talks about, the former Australian quick talks about his life in and out and after cricket. So thank you for joining Cricket's Conversation. We've got quite a lot to get through in the next 20, 25 minutes or so, including the announcement of a women's T20 triangular, which is pretty exciting, actually, between West Indies, India and South Africa as a warm-up tournament to the women's T20 World Cup being staged in Cape Town, Paarl and Port Elizabeth in February. But first of all, Zams, I want to talk about the SA20. We should probably do an update of the SA20 if there is any news every time we do a podcast. So a good friend of mine, who is not a cricket fanatic, I have to say, but his children are very, very keen. And he doesn't really... One of the reasons we get on so well is that he doesn't really know very much at all about cricket, but his children are very keen. He's got a boy and a girl, and they both play at school. And so he said to me, I see the fixtures of the SA20 have been announced. I said, yeah, that's right. I said, I'm surprised you noticed. He said, no, I didn't. The kids did. He said, can you please tell me one thing? Why are the games starting at 5:30 at the height of rush hour? He said, my kids, they'll still be playing. They want to go and play. They like the games at school don't finish till 6 o'clock. And I said to him, what you have to understand, Don, is that, and I'm not being cynical at all. I said, Don, what you need to understand is this is basically an Indian tournament being played for the benefit of the Indian market in South Africa. And frankly, we should be very grateful that they're using most of our best players in their teams. But that's the reality. I said, it won't be the first time, and it won't be the last time that you go, why are they doing that? That doesn't suit. That doesn't help at all. Corporate suite holders don't get their boxes during the SA20, or if they do, they have to pay for them again. So. And I'm not being facetious or sarcastic. I'm honestly not. I am grateful that the 6 franchises were bought by IPL teams. But am I right? It's an Indian tournament being played for the benefit of the Indian market, and I hope it's very exciting and it will be a massive success, and that the trickle down effect of the money that it generates will keep the game healthy and alive in South Africa.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We've got hosting rights and hopefully enough of a hosting fee to, like you say, trickle down and make a difference in South African cricket. I think what you should remind, Don, is that the last time the IPL was in South Africa, or the only time that the IPL was in South Africa, in 2009, games started at 4:30 because that's 8 o'clock in India, and that's prime time. So this is already 5:30 is a bit of a compromise to make it 9:30 to try and get a lot of these school children to games. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we would do in a non-South African. A South African game would kick off at 6 o'clock for an evening game to try and get as many people from work into the grounds. But you're getting into 9:30 and finishing at after midnight in India at that point. So it doesn't add up. So yeah, there are a lot of compromises, and you just hope that it is a success, this first one, because it is so crucial to so many people involved in South African cricket that it is a success. I know there's a 10-year deal on the table, but the first year sets the tone to make sure that the other 9 are gonna be profitable. So there's been a lot of a noise being made in the background, and it's good to see fixtures because, there have been false dawns with T20 tournaments in South Africa before, and when you don't see crucial things like fixtures come out or broadcast partnerships being announced, you start getting twitchy. So the fact that we do know now that MI Cape Town and Paarl are going to play the very first game on the 10th of January is a sense of relief. The journey from now until then, of course, is still going to be laden with a lot of complications and logistical issues, but at least there's a date in mind, and there's a fixture to look forward to.
You've been more closely involved with the SA20, at least not within it, but from without it. You've been looking and speaking and talking. You've had a look inside. How will it work? How will the trickle down effect, in simple terms, how will the money? You will know that the 14 provinces collectively, between them to varying degrees, owe Cricket South Africa close to 210 million rand. That's money that they borrowed to upgrade their facilities. The game is sort of very close to being bankrupt. All 14 provinces, to some degree, owe Cricket South Africa money. Boerland in Paarl owe 28 million. I think they paid for the new floodlights and upgraded. It's a wonderful facility now, and it, of course, as we know, will be home to the Paarl Royals. But how is the money going to trickle down to pay off all this debt?
It's a complicated issue because SuperSport are a pretty big shareholder in this, and obviously the actual owners of the franchises are not doing this for free. And then eventually, Cricket South Africa, and then by consequence, the franchises are also stakeholders in this. But it is, for all intents and purposes, it's a completely different tournament with shareholders and bills to pay. They've just announced this Viacom 18 broadcast partnership deal. The numbers around that are a secret at the moment, but you do realize that there's no title sponsor, and there's no that's where the money comes. You want to be called the Emirates SA20 or whatever. The IPL is the Airtel IPL or whatever it is. That title sponsor is where the real money comes in. The broadcast pays for the nuts and bolts and makes sure that everything looks pretty. But you need a title sponsor that's going to say, okay, I'm putting my name behind this and giving you whatever, $250 million over 10 years, because I believe that there's going to be enough return on that investment. That's what it's lacking at the moment, and that's what they're desperately chasing, because you can't speak trickle down at the moment when you've just paid the necessary bills to be able to host. You've paid players, you've paid grounds, and then you've got a broadcast partner in place. The real pretty stuff and the stuff that makes everybody in profit are the commercial partners, whether they're for individual teams, in terms of My Cape Town being sponsored by whoever. And these are going to have to be international. This is an international product. The reality is the numbers are too steep probably for most South African companies to even look at. So as much as things are in place, the profit is not nearly in place. And it may not even be in place by the time the tournament starts, because you're wading into new territory in a very, very busy market. And there's got to be almost a proof of concept where people see this thing and see people in the stands and see the excitement and see a new wave of players come through. They're also competing with this tournament in Dubai. So it's not that straightforward. So everyone is hopeful. But until you start seeing commercial partners and a title sponsor of international repute, you've got to understand that it's not breaking even just yet. It's not this golden egg that's being laid and everyone is comfortable again. It's far from it. There's a lot of work that still needs to happen.
Okay, more on this subject in just a moment.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
We're talking SA20 and whether it will be the financial golden egg that Cricket South Africa desperately needs, and everyone is hoping it will be. So, Zams, 3 weeks ago, I heard that the SA20 board were a matter of days away from announcing a global title sponsor. That was 3 weeks ago. I was given the tip off, look out, it's going to be massive. It's a massive, but that was 3 weeks ago. So it's gone cold, I assume.
Well, this is the problem with overpromising. You then have to deliver, you've got 6 of the biggest franchises in the IPL. They are itching and desperate, and for all the goodwill that they've come in with, they've also come in with cold hard cash that they want to return on. They're not billionaires because they are charitable. They are ruthless business people who invest in things that they believe will, quite frankly, make them more money. Yes, entertain them, but make them more money, grow the franchises. So you do worry when something that was supposed to happen weeks ago is still quiet. I know there's negotiations going on a daily basis, and it's complicated because in India it's almost every team for itself. But the IPL is big enough that every team can be for itself and have its title sponsors and have its ways of doing things. Here, my understanding is that there's a lot more compromise because you're trying to sell as a whole as opposed to selling as individual franchises who are off around the world trying to sell MI Cape Town or sell Pearl Royals. You're trying to sell this collective tournament with 6 owners and whatever stakeholders around, so there's almost 10 fingers in one pie that you're trying to sell. So it is more complex. I'm not surprised that it's taken the time that it's taken. And it might not even be announced by the end of this year, I would think, because it's one thing getting the sponsor to come on board and saying, here's what I'm willing to offer. You then everyone has to agree and put egos aside and say, okay, that's not the numbers that I'm used to. I'm normally used to getting those on my own. Now I've got to share with not just 5 other owners, but SuperSport as a partner and CSA by some sort of partner. So it's complex. It's complex, and I'm sure they are pretty heated meetings because, like I say, if you've paid $10 million upfront dollars to buy a stake, you want to get that back as soon as possible, and then start looking at profit share.
What our listeners and viewers might not know about Viacom 18 is that it's owned by the Ambani brothers Reliance Group, who of course own Mumbai Indians. So it is. I mean, it's a conflict of interest springs to mind. I mean, it's a great thing because there is no such thing as a bottomless pit of money, and even billionaires can run out of it. But it seems the Ambani brothers are quite unlikely to run out anytime soon. So they started Viacom 18. It's their broadcast company, and so there's a great sense of comfort that when they sign a 10-year deal to broadcast the tournament in India, it's not going to fall flat. It's not going to develop a puncture. But you do sort of wonder how much extra coverage Mumbai Indians might get. But be that as it may, it is happening. We've got the fixture list, which is great. Do you think, is your sense that we actually, you mentioned, when people see a crowd, they see the stadiums, hopefully with lots of people in them, if not entirely full. Do you think this thing actually has to start moving before title sponsors can say, okay? Or, I mean, does it have to do a season? Does it need to do 2 seasons before somebody says, okay, well, you finally got this car fixed and it's working, so we're interested?
Yeah, my sense would be it has to probably do a season. There's been false dawns with South African T20 tournaments that make all the right noises and make all the promises, and from T20 Global League to Mzansi Super League. So the world is skeptical, as much as certainly India wants to be a part of South African cricket and help South African cricket, and they see an opportunity to be commercially successful. Investors are twitchy for a number of reasons. We've discussed other complications in South African cricket in other podcasts, but for this specific market of T20 League, you have to see that the South African audience has not been turned off by performances and politics and everything else, that they will still turn up at grounds, because nothing sells a tournament more than people having a good time at this tournament that you have put your title sponsorship to. If it's empty and soulless, even if you have the very best players in the world earning millions, it's not a good look. It's empty. It was hard to watch the IPL in lockdown because it was empty. You can generate the crowd noise, but it's empty. The ball flies into the stands and the player has to jump over 10 seats and pick it up themselves and come back because no one else can touch it because of COVID. That COVID was a picture of what happens when you have a product but you don't have the people. So it needs the people. People are the energy. And people are your best influences because they tell you that we love this thing, and therefore you should put more money into it because we're having a great time with this thing. And that in turn brings players who maybe said, I'm unavailable for this window. They go, jeepers, I can have more fun in South Africa than I can have in the Big Bash. I'm up for the next South African auction. I don't care what the price is. Everyone looks like they had a good time. Then you add the other paraphernalia of going to the bush and jump diving, Bloberg, or whatever else you do in South Africa. But the thing that sells it is an awesome stadium experience that looks good on TV if you can't be at the ground yourself. And that's the challenge. In the first year, you have to hit the ground running and sell this dream and make it look authentic and see people having fun.
Okay, another short break. When we come back, we'll have a short section when Sams and I review the T20 World Cup for what it's worth.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Okay, Zams, I got my timings all wrong once again. It's going to be a very short section, and some people will say that's appropriate given South Africa's exit from the T20 World Cup. But it is interesting that the final, and we're recording this before the final is played, it may well be posted after the final, so we won't be talking about the result. But it fascinates me that the final is being played between a team that was beaten by Ireland and a team that was beaten by Zimbabwe.
Indeed. But, two teams that have probably saved their best cricket for the semi-finals when it matters most. Because, there have been a lot of other teams who've also lost to minnows. We know that very well. But when it absolutely mattered, England put up their best performance against India, just absolute dominance. And Pakistan were pretty clinical against New Zealand. I mean, they were measured, they were composed, they were, turned over a new leaf. So it points to at least a high quality final in Melbourne, and it'll be hopefully a fitting end to what has been a very, very interesting, surprising T20 World Cup.
Interesting. Is that your chosen description? If I ask you to sum up the T20 World Cup, you'd say it's been interesting.
Illuminating, shocking. It has definitely not lacked interest. I mean, it's from the very first game when Namibia beat Sri Lanka. It's had its twists and turns, and that, look, we said right at the beginning after that result that the growth of the game is seen when the gap closes between the so-called big nations and the smaller ones. Of course, as a South African, you're mortified when South Africa loses to the Netherlands. But again, as we said, other nations will be emboldened to say that it is possible. You can topple these big guns. And the interest, I'm sure, in the Netherlands, knowing that they guaranteed the next World Cup for sure, passage into the main event, it's a pity that the season is over. It's winter, because people will be itching to get out and emulate what they saw. So in terms of growing interest, even for the neutral, I mean, people who don't care for cricket would have heard the Netherlands beat South Africa and understood why is that significant. And then you understand it and you see that it's just complete Cinderella story. So it's good for the game when these stories pop up. And you hope England will be favourites, but you hope that Pakistan can give us one last twist in the final and turn the tables, because it's been that kind of tournament of upsets and surprises. So hopefully, right to the last ball, it is surprising.
It's always surprising with Pakistan. Always. I'm sure it's never dull. Surprise.
It's never
dull. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Sam. Thank you as well for listening to South Africa on 99.94, where we speak cricket every day or every other day. Please rate, review and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It certainly does help get the word out. You can download the 99.94 app and follow us on Twitter at Neil Manthorpe and at WhamZam17.